Thank you so much for coming. To me, it's a great honor to have so many people in the room watching this session. I'm going to try everything I can to give you the best session that I could ever do. If you never met me before, my name is Marcus Murray, and I'm a Swedish IT security consultant. And I focus in both security and penetration testing. So I think that's really my strength. I know a little bit of both sides. So, welcome to this session, how to defend yourself against hacker frameworks. And we're going to look at some different things in this session. It's structured up into 4 parts. First, we're going to look at exploitation in action. We're actually going to create an exploit, step by step, so everybody in this room understands the concept of an exploit and how it's created. And then we're going to look at exploitation frameworks and what they're like. And that's actually going to be like the first 25 minutes of the session. The rest of the session, we're going to talk about countermeasures, a step to exploit-proofing your environment. It's also a 400-level session, so we're going to go pretty deep down sometimes. And I hope you appreciate that. Myself, I've been an attendant of IT Forum for years, and I like those 400-level sessions. I'm really happy to be able to give you one myself. So did you have a good IT Forum so far? Yeah. Thank you. You're talking to me. That's hilarious. To be honest, if my boss knew there were so many people here, he would kill me for bringing only 10 business cards. He would kill me, I promise you. So let's look at exploit frameworks. This is an exploit framework. This is the most popular one out there that is for free. This is the Metasploit framework. It's pretty simple to use, and I think that's the biggest bad thing about it from a security perspective. Anybody can run it. And I'm going to run one just to kick this session off. And I'm going to choose old exploits because a couple of years ago in IT Forum I ran like a 0-day, and that wasn't too appreciated. So it's just fantastic I'm back here again. So this is a Service Pack 0 IE 6.0 exploit. This is a Microsoft-focused session, but of course this could as well have been third-party exploit or something else. Linux, Macintosh, whatever. So I'm setting this up, and this is how you work this application. First you pick the exploit, then you select the target, and everybody in this room will understand the difference between target selections. This is a universal target exploit, but it could as well be selected targets. And then when you're done, you pick a payload, and this is the evil part of the exploit. The first part is the thing that uses the vulnerability. This part is actually what is going to happen when the vulnerability strikes. That's the evil payload. And I'm going to try the best one in the pack, the Win32 reverse VNC inject. I'm actually going to try to inject VNC into targets, just for the fun of it. So basically all I need to do is configure some stuff, and what I'm going to do here, this exploit, is a client-side exploit. So it will set up a web server, and any client connecting to this web server who is vulnerable, unpatched, lacking a lot of bad security measures or good security measures, will be hit. Not well-secured systems, they will not be hit. That's the moral of the story in this session. So I'll configure it. Since it's a reverse VNC inject, I need to give it the IP address of my attack machine so it can connect back to me. And that's pretty good if you have firewalls and stuff. It's better that the host connect to me over any port of my choice. This is client side. So I'm just going to fire off exploit. This will set up the web server, start in reverse handle, waiting for connections. Then I'm going to go to this target machine, the unpatched machine. The normal IT guy admin surfing from his machine on the enterprise. Many people in the room are admins. You would never surf from your own laptop, right? I know you wouldn't. 192.168.0.5, which is the IP address of the attack machine. Just banging away here. Let's look at the hacker. We're waiting for connections. I'm crossing my fingers because exploitation is sometimes a bit unstable. I don't know. I don't think you know how hard I cross them. It's if I push 1, I will actually go to the right server. So that was a pretty good security measure. Send them an email, give them the wrong link. That's good. So let's try this one instead. 1.5. Actually, I'll start. And then, because I wanted this to be a control exploit, I configured it to go to port 8080. I could have done port 80. Thank you so much. We're in this together, guys. I mean, I don't know what I would do without you. It's okay if I do something in error. Just cry out and help me. It's very much okay. 8080. If it doesn't work now, I don't know what to do. So let's go back to the attacker, the hack machine. VNC shell, the IT guy admin desktop. So what happened is that he connected back to me. Can you see that? Have you seen that before, all of you? I think that's pretty scary, isn't it? And if you put this in perspective, for example, Adobe, they had a 0-day vulnerability on the Acrobat reader. Acrobat, only weeks ago. That was a 0-day. So if you were downloading or clicking a link to a PDF file without having the correct security controls in place, you would have been infected. People could see your desktop or do whatever they want on your system. So you understand the concept. This was a client-side exploit. I mean, I own this machine. Since this is like a proof of concept code, they give you this courtesy shell. So you can, even though this was an exploit and the guy wasn't logged on, you could do net user add, net administrators, blah, blah, add, net local group administrators. So you would own the machine and log on. So, to be nice to this user, I'm actually going to restart him. It's always nice when you're a hacker to restart his machine for later. So that's basically what a Metasploit framework is. Something that is very easy to use, that can run attacks against systems. And we have server-side and client-side exploits. So I'm going to show you the concept of a server-side exploit. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create an exploit from scratch. And that will include finding the vulnerability. Okay? So I'm going to put this in a scenario. Let's say that I'm an evil hacker, and I want to exploit this network. And everything I have right now is some IP addresses replying to ping. So this is a command prompt. I could just do like ping 192.168.40.20, so 120. And I realize that this guy is answering, okay? So maybe I run the nmap, network mapper. I would do this with good configuration otherwise, but I'm just going to fire it away to save some time. This is not about network hacking. So this is a port mapper. If we look for open port, and behind every open port in the computer system, there will be a listening service. And the concept of exploit is finding vulnerabilities in services and applications. As a hacker, I would probably not see all these ports exposed to the web. I would probably only see 21 or 80, things like that. The rest would be filtered by the firewall or something. So let's go for the low-hanging fruit. I'm going to try the port 21 and see what that is. They say FTP server. I'm just going to fire off a netcat, which is a raw TCP tool, to do 192.168.40.20, port 21. Yep. I have 40 at home, okay? Now you know, I'm exposing information about my home network. Maybe you'll steal my pictures one day. So, I can see that this is a Jagar fan club FTP service, war FTP daemon 1.65. This is valuable information for a hacker. This could be phony, but if it's correct, I know now that I can see if there is an exploit for the FTP server of this version. And this is a network-based exploitation process. If this was local, I would just, okay, I'm going to try to attack Adobe. I'm going to just download all the Adobe software and start working it. But it's the same process I'm showing here. So I want to hack this one. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the web and try to find the software, because I want to reverse this and do this locally on my attack machine. So if we look at this, I have identified my targets. It is step number 1 in the process. Identify targets. Click. This is how I do it. OneNote is my friend. So next step, identify entry points. An entry point is wherever in the application it will be listening to input. I mean, if this is an FTP service, the natural place would be like where the user logon is, right? That's input to the application. If you want to exploit a browser, the input would be when it downloads a web page or a picture or something. Whenever you can send something to the application, that is an attack vector, a potential attack vector. So the entry point, I have identified one. I'm going to try the user logon thing. And I'm going to run this locally, as I said. So I go back to my attack machine. And I'm going to fire up this application now locally to try to exploit it. But the difference I'm going to do between from me and the real targets environment is that I'm going to run it through a debugger. Because I want to really see what's going on in this application when I try to attack it. And this is all a debug. This is just one of the many debuggers out there that is a little bit optimized for exploit making. So I'm going to open this WarFTP through the debugger. And this is actually a representation of what's going on in RAM right now. This is the debugger running. So now we're going to move down to the 400 level for a second. Let's look at exploit making here. If I want to create an exploit, if you remember anything from what I did when I started the first attack in the Metasploit framework, it will consist of different parts. So this is the exploit right here. So the first part, this is a sample buffer overflow attack. I'm going to try to override the buffer of the user input when it says user in the FTP application, the logon session. So first of all, I'm going to try to identify the size of the buffer. That's step number one. My second step, and this is also a little bit 400 level, I'm going to try to find the return address. And this works like this. In the memory stack, since this is a stack-based buffer overflow, this is the memory stack right here. They work in a last in, first out manner, so everything on the top of the stack will be executed. So we have to make an assumption when we're going to attack this application. And my assumption is that the logon function will look something similar maybe to this. That they somewhere define the size of a buffer. And my only way to exploit it is if they don't control the size of the buffer. If it's only supposed to be 200 characters big, that's all that is reserved, but maybe I can send in 500 characters instead. If I can, I will be sending in characters into RAM. If I'm sending in the right characters that can be translated into machine code, I will actually be able to execute code on the RAM of the machine, on the CPU on the machine. Okay? So this is going to be pretty cool, but it will take a while. So basically, I'm going to try to identify the buffer size, which I don't know right now. And whenever that is executed or over, there will be a 4-character big return address space place. So whenever the application knows the logon function is done and the buffer is filled with the logon information, then he will get the return address here. This is just a hex address that will take him back to the application. Okay? But I don't want him to go back to his normal place in the application. I want to find out exactly how I can control this so I can put my own reference to RAM in there so I can redirect the flow and make it execute my own code. This will make sense. Right now it's a bit confusing, I know, but I did this before. Trust me, everybody will be clear how this works in the end of the session. Don't worry. So, step number 1, find the size of the buffer. Step number 2, find a valid return address. We're going to get into depth on that later. And step number 3, find a good evil payload. Because I will put the payload in after this, and since this one is already read by the processor, what will be in the top of the stack after that will be the evil payload. You understand? Nod with your head if you do. Do it like this if you don't. I'll say it again. Good. Thank you. Feedback. That works. And some extra thing that I will put in here is some padding. I'm going to put some no operations in here. This is only to make the exploit more reliable. This is like some zeros. They don't do anything. Okay, no operations. So that's the payload will come off a little bit more nicely. So it finds the right place in the RAM. If it doesn't, it does nothing, 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 and then finds the payload. Okay? So let's go for the buffer size. Let's find out how we can identify the buffer size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to provoke this application locally using something called a fuzzer. I could actually do this with a normal command line telnet or something, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it with a fuzzer because that's more like what they do in the real world. So I'm going to use this pitch fuzz application. If you can't see what's on the screen, move forward. There are good seats over here. Okay? So I'm going to run the pitch fuzzer to see if I can overwrite the buffer. And I will show you how I can identify that. So with the pitch fuzz application, I'm just going to enter some syntax. I'm going to enter the targets, and I'm going to do it locally in the first place. TCP protocol, port 21, the FTP template, because this buffer can do different protocols. And then I'm going to use something called the overflow strings. The overflow strings is the real meat of this application. And if we look at the overflow strings file, that is actually where we define what we are going to send to the application. So in the overflow strings file, I can decide to send in, let's say, 500 A's. And the thing is that if I did this with the FTP client application, it would be sanitized. An FTP client application follows the RFC of the FTP protocol, so it will not send in 500-character long usernames. Okay? So I need a fuzzer. And the fuzzer will also do variations of the log and try to do things a little bit differently. He's going to try this and that and this, the abbreviations of a normal logo. So I'm going to try 500 days, save this down, and run it. Oh, jeez, why did I do that? Target 127.0.0.1 PCP 21 FTP overflow strings, and bang away. And if I look at the Olle debug debugger, it's starting to blink. So I can kill the buffer, the pitch fuzzer right now, and look at the Olle debugger. And when I look at this, I can see that there's been an access violation when executing 41, 41, 41, 41. Anybody good at ASCII here? Any web coders? 1. Do you know what it stands for? Capital A. That's good. Why? Because we sent in 500 A's. Okay? So if we look at the picture, I sent in A's all the way here, and I overwrote the buffer. So now the CPU was instructed to go to the location AAAA, 41, 41, 41, 41. And this is great news to me, because now I know that the buffer is less than 500. This is not X anymore. This is something that is less than 500. Something smaller than that. And I know for a fact that I can control the return pointer. Great news for a hacker. And the same process will work for any kind of exploitation. It's just going to be more complex nowadays. So, I don't know the buffer size yet, but I do know the access entry point. Why not? Choom. Don't low on it. So the buffer size, let's see exactly what it is. And usually a hacker, he wouldn't use a fuzzer this way, really, when he knows that there is an overflow in it. He would run a pattern file. He would just send in a pattern that will never repeat itself, so he knows. When he reads out that it's A, B, C, D, he knows exactly, so he can calculate that. But I think this is better for demo. So I'm going to run this pitch fuzz one last time to prove to you that I can find the size of the buffer. So I'm going to restart the application, running debug restart. Because I killed it, there was an access violation. So I'm going to set it up again to run, take it online, run the attack again. This time I'm going to change the buffer overflow string size till, I'm just guessing now, okay? 487. It came to me, you know. File save. And bang away. It crashed. I can see that. It's blinking. So, since we're not going to do this the full session of hacking, we're going to countermeasures. I'm going to do this a little bit quick. I now know that there's an access violation when executing 2020-41-41. So when I send in 487 A's, I overwrite how big part of the return address? 2 pieces, right? So the buffer size is 485. Good job. If you apply for a job, call me, okay? I think you can do this. It's that easy. So, 20-20-41-41. The buffer size is 487 minus 2 because I overwrote 2 characters of the buffer. I could flip this back and forth to make sure that this is, it could by accident be exactly the same right there. So, this is great news. I know the size of the buffer. I can start working on my exploit. I'm going to restart this also. Take it online. Let's go back to the attacker here and start working on the real attack. Because I need to create something that will work. So I know that I have a buffer of 487, and I'm going to send in 487 A's. That's going to be my start, first part of the exploit. So 487 would be a good value here. I'll just take this away. 487 A's. 485. This is why some of the exploit out there in the wild doesn't work. Bad coders. So, back to the attack platform. This is a timely operation here. Looking at this Python script that anybody could write, I'm just going to do this structured way of doing print, first user, and then send in 485 A's. So that's what this little so-called script is going to do for me. So if I do this 0 here, I'm going to user and A's, and this is what I'm going to send to the target later on. Okay, it makes sense, right? I'm filling up the buffer. Now I need a valid return address. And the thing about return addresses is that there is no static address that will take me to the top of the stack. Because, you know, right now, this is already executed. So if I find a pointer that can take me back to the top of the stack, this will be executed next, and this is my evil payload, right? But there is no good reference for me to find directly to the pointer. But in different places in RAM, in different registers, an indirect pointer exists. I can do a jump ESP, which is a register of the top of the stack, where they store information about the top of the stack. The CPU stores that information, because it needs to find its way to the top of the stack. So let's look at the debugger again and see how hard it is to find one of those. If I look at this, FTP debugger in all debug, I only have to right-click and search for overflow return addresses in RAM and do the jump call ESP. And since this is an application, FTP, you can only send ASCII characters through it. It's looking for ASCII overflow returns, valid characters that can be translated into ASCII signs. Okay? So I will start, I'm not going to start the search here because this will take like 15 minutes on this virtual machine to run it. But they're actually, this is called the opcodes in the hacker-attacker world. So there are actually opcode databases out there where you can just browse for working opcodes for different operating system levels. Because it's not going to be the same opcode in different versions of Windows, for example. It's going to be one opcode for one language, another opcode for another XP Service Pack 1 or 2 or something. That is why if you had Blaster 100 years ago, it crashed some system and works on some systems. If you saw that shutdown sign, they used the wrong opcode. Nobody would agree they ever saw it, but I know some of you did. So I'm not going to search it. I'm just going to use it because I have one that will work. But all I needed to do was just start the search. It will consume a lot of processing power. So if I work on my exploit here, when I find the opcode, all I need to do is to put it in the script. So this is the opcode that I either found in a list. This is a valid address in RAM. This is 750231E2. That is possible to translate into ASCII characters. What the little thing here does is that it translates it into ASCII, and it will reverse the order of it, because if you saw it before, we overwrote the buffer from the back, because it's executed from up and down. So the code will come in from down up. So if I run this, we can get some feedback. This is number 1. User, fill the buffer, and then the opcode down here. Isn't it scary that you can really interpret this? It makes sense. Then we're going to put some new operations in there. That's the next step. New operations. And the new operations here is going to be Bs. I'm going to try 32 Bs. It will probably work with 50 Bs. It doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to do the exploit thing again. Go back to my exploit making. And do the next one if we look at the script again. To follow the flow here, 32 of the character B. 41 was A, so 42 is B. And I'm going to run that one. Overflow, return address, and Bs. And then I need to find the shellcode. Evil machine code that will execute in RAM. How hard can that be? If we go back and look at the Metasploit framework, we can actually get it right from the application itself. This is a storage of payloads. So this is Windows, Macintosh, Unix, Solaris, Linux. This is not a Microsoft issue. This is a software issue, okay? Actually, most of this session we're going to talk about the defenses made by Microsoft, and some of them are really great. Right now they're ahead. So we could do this Windows bind shell. This is a very good proof of concept. This is where you usually start. A stable, simple bind shell. Whoever connects to whatever port we choose, in this case 4444, will get a shell. Listen for connections and spawn a shell. And we can generate that payload. We have different encoders and stuff. That is to circumvent security technologies. If you have an IPS looking for signatures, we can actually decode this one different ways. So when generated. This is all I need. This is machine instructors to spawn a shell remotely. That's how big it needs to be. So I'm going to put this in the code. Back to pitch fuzz. This is the machine code right here. I'm going to put it in this print user, 485As, return address, padding, 32 Bs, the new operations, and then the SC, which is the sum of all this. I'm going to try to print it. 3. Here we go. Is there anyone in the room who doesn't understand exactly what this means? If I showed this in the beginning of the session, would you understand? Pretty cool. So, next step will be to run this, but inject it into a text file. So I'm just going to do a redirect this into the ITF attack code .text. IT form attack code. And then I'm going to try to use it towards the real target over the internet. So let's go back to the target before we start. and look at it. The target right now, which is the Windows 2000 server, this is a sucky server from today's perspective when it comes to security, because the Microsoft Security Initiative started after Windows 2000, the 2000 era. So if we do a normal CMD netstat, we can actually see that there is no port 444 listening. There's no port 444 here. And that's a good thing, because now you know you don't have that proof of concept exploit anyway. You might have a good rootkit, but who cares? So let's run this exploit. I'm going to netcat towards a real target, 192.168.1. I don't like you. You have to like me though, or else you can leave. No, you don't have to like me. It's okay to hate me. A lot of people does, and I'm not lying. So 192.168.20. I'm attacking port 21, and I'm going to inject the ITF attack. Yeah, I did this tonight 3 times so that I would give you a good demo. I didn't sleep much for your sake. So ITF attack.text. Press enter. Hey, username okay, need password. If this works, if it works, I will now be able to connect to port 444 and get a command prompt on the server. Let's look at the server and see if there is a port listener on that port. Do the same command again. That's scary. This is a remote server somewhere. Only listening on port 21. Everything else is firewall. Maybe they don't have a very good firewall that can check protocol compliance. That could help us as well. That could help. They don't allow usernames longer than this. The firewall could do that today. The ISO could do it. Not any firewall, but the ISO could do it. I'm not employed by Microsoft, but I know this is the only way for me to come back here. Say some nice things. They kicked me out twice. I'm back here. I think this is third time in a row, you know. So, okay, let's see if we can connect. I'm going to netcat the raw TCP tool net connection towards the 192.168.1.20 over port 4444. Hey, what happened? Document setting administrator desktop exploits WFTPD. IP config. I'm sitting on the 20 box. This is because somebody created a sucky application in the first place, security-wise. Maybe it was a good FTP server, but it has the lack of security. The operating system doesn't have the security controls in place. The people running the firewalls or the enterprise are not putting in extra security controls in place. Then this is what's going to happen. I promise you. If you're not patching your applications, this is what's going to happen. Now everybody's quiet, and I like it. I mean, I can run anything. I can run code on this machine. This could have been any kind of code. When we look at other things later, it's going to be a bit scary. So let's spend the rest of this session talking about countermeasures. And this is, now I get your attention, this is where the interesting part starts. Something that you might be able to bring home. And you know, this is a 400-level session. I'm not going to be talking too much about, you know, conceptual things. I'm going to do some of that. But I'm going to try to give you some bits and bytes I found that can be interesting. That's what I like about IT Forum. When you get these small secrets or things I didn't know before, I can put in my pocket and bring home, right? So that's what I'm going to try to give you. So countermeasures. Of course, there are different things we can do. If we look at the new systems, the Windows Vista, the Windows Server 2008, they have great features built already into how they run RAM in the CPU, like ASLR and stuff. I'm going to get into detail on that soon. Depth. We're actually going to do some ASLR Kung Fu. Trust me, I'm going to do that. But you probably haven't seen before. Some of you might, but I don't think so. Hardening, patching, host firewall, malware detection, stuff like that. We're not going to talk so much about IDS, IPS. Is Laura Chappell in the room? Hands up if you are. I can't see you. Yes, you are. Are you running your session on attack signatures? No. Laura Chappell is like the king of TCP/IP, or queen, since she's a woman. Sorry, I'm not used to that in the IT business. I think, yeah, she's one of the greatest, and she runs this great session on attack signatures, how to detect them. So whenever she's running it the next time, go find it, attend that session. I promise you, it's a great session. I'm not going to cover that area, that's why I refer you to that one. I'm going to be more bits and bytes. So of course, we can protect the application and OS itself by hardening and patching. And layer 3 is interesting with the IPsec and stuff. We can actually control the port level, so if you're not authenticated in some reasons, if you have that kind of service that is not totally public, you can bring authentication to that so people will not even access the process in the first place, or limit exposure of the process. Because you can't hack what you can't reach. The good thing about the local things on the target level is that they are security controls that you can use even though somebody's attacking you from the internal network. I think there is too much focus on the network devices still today. Because if I did my client-side exploits and I own one client, I can run from there. Then you will have to rely on host security. I don't think you should take away the network security. I think you should also use the host security features. And that's a problem because we are still not really host-centered when it comes to security. We want to buy a box. Maybe not you, because you're on IT forum and you're interested. You're attending sessions like this. But most people want to buy a red box or a blue box or whatever. So let's go into ASLR in depth and look at the features. I mean, this is only a diagram so that you can see that Microsoft has put a lot of effort into building security features into Vista and 2008 Server. We have the ASLR, which will provide us with randomness in RAM. There's been a lot of writing on the ASLR, and I'm not with the Microsoft team, I'm external, so I cannot really get the secret details of it. But people said that it's had a limited degree of randomness. In the beta 2, people said it was only like 32 different variations. Now they say it's 255. I read Michael Howard's blog, and he's like the king of this. You're the queen, Laura. Maybe you should meet him. Maybe you already did. So he says it's something depending on where, heap, stack, things like that, the image of the RAM, is something between 256 and 16,000. So there is good randomness in ASLR. But that is the fact that if you look at the exploit again, the good thing about ASLR is that if I'm doing my exploitation, follow the process I did before, when I try to find the return address, if ASLR is running, I cannot make the exploit at home and go attack that network server. Because whenever it fires up the ORFTP daemon, it will end up in a different place in memory. So I will probably miss the target. I can make a denial of service, I can overwrite the buffer, but I don't know how to find my attack code. So now you understand what ASLR does for you, I think. If you look at DEP, that is data execution prevention. So ASLR will make you do like this. Evil hacker runs code on this machine. He injects the evil payload, but he can't find it. ASLR. DEP does this. He injects the code here. Even though he can find it, there is a no execute flag, which will instruct the CPU that this is only variable information. There's supposed to be username there. This is read-only, no execute. So even though I send machine code for execution there, it's flagged no execute. So either way, ASLR is good, pretty good. DEP is good. Together, they're fine. They're great. And along with all these other security features, Secure Heap Manager that does some randomization of and integrity of the system, or the RAM. Buffer security check, the GS flag. The pointer obfuscations, things to make it more difficult for the hacker. It's really difficult to attack Windows Vista and Windows Server 2008 today, to make a working exploit. If you went to Black Hat this year, you would be surprised because everybody was expecting these cool Vista hacks. Nobody was presenting any real cool stuff. It's difficult. That's a good security measure. Move up to the late security with the new operating systems. Protected processes. It's the fact that if you attack a process, it will restart twice. The third time, it's going to stay dead. So you only get like at most 3 chances. Restricted services, the fact that you can set ACLs on services. You can lower the impact. If you control the service, you don't get full access. It's restricted. A lot of security features in here. So let's do some ASLR Kung Fu. The thing with ASLR, if you look at Marko Sinovic, great tool, Process Explorer, is that ASLR is good, we know that. And of course, Microsoft, since they implemented this, they did the job well, they has ASLR enabled all their applications. This is sorted by company name. So Microsoft Corporation here is using ASLR. Everybody else is not. So, I mean, ASLR is great, but did anybody tell you that this system doesn't really use ASLR? I mean, not for everything. The heap and the stack is ASLR and stuff like that, but the image-based of some applications aren't. So my Kung Fu trick here is to actually enable ASLR for an application myself, even though the software vendor don't care. So I send this email to Adobe, and I tell them, can you please ASLR enable your applications, and they don't care about me. Especially not since I used to demo this Acrobat Reader exploit. So if I fire up Adobe Acrobat Reader, I'm going to play with their application just because of that. So I'm going to fire up Acrobat Reader. Acrobat Reader. And before you try to do this, you should definitely copy the file. But the thing is that, yeah, even better, copy it twice. So, I don't know what to use. Copy. Where's the original? I killed that one. Who cares? There it is. So, Acrobat Reader, I'm going to fire it up. And looking at Process Explorer, I can probably see, hopefully, I'm going to sort by name, that Acrobat Reader is running DEP, but it's not running ASLR. I'm going to get to DEP later, but I have done some things in my system, so DEP is running everywhere. I'm going to show you how to do it, how easy it is. You probably know already, but I'm going to show you some stuff about that. So I want this to be ASLR aware. And if you go to the vendor, and they really want to help you, they will read the information from Microsoft, and Microsoft will tell them that all you need to do is fire up Visual Studio. It's even in Delphi and things like that nowadays, latest versions, and do this link exe with the dynamic base syntax. And I know most of you aren't coders, because if you were, you would be here this week, on the developers. So I'm not really a coder either, so I'm going to do this with a hex editor instead, because all they're doing, this link thing, is just changing a bit in the PE header of the executable. And I'm going to change that flag in the hex editor, and it's this easy. And then I can patch my application, Acrobat Reader, and I can deploy it in the company, and they will all be ASLR. I'm not telling you to do this, but this is a foreign level session. If you want these tips and tricks, you can use them. If not, it's not supported. But it will make you more secure. It will. Because you will use the features of Windows Server 2008. Eventually, everything will be ASLR, I think, more or less. So I'm going to fire up this P stub. This is just something that I downloaded from the web. I know you never download anything from the web because you want to be secure, but I did. I admit it. This is not my productional system, though. Open P file. I'm going to take the Acrobat Reader, which one ever I can pick. Acrobat Reader, I want the real one. Acrobat Reader. I'm going to open it. And this is the debugger exposing the basic headers. And in the basic header, in the optional header field, there's a DLL characteristics field. And this is where the flag is set. This is what you need to know. This is how difficult this is. If you know that you should download some application, a hex editor, that can find the DLL characteristics and change the 00 into 40, and save this. Then the next time you fire up Acrobat Reader, and look at this, it's going to be ASLR. That was the ASLR Kung Fu. Too bad nobody appreciated it. No, I think that, I mean, when you think about it, now you can use ASLR and DEP in together. And that will increase security, and you will use the new features until the vendors helps you with this. And if you make your own applications or have own homegrown application, you can do this. Actually, I will take questions later, because I'm going to need all my time here. I'm going to be outside, and I'm going to ask questions until you get tired and leave. Okay? So I'm going to be there. So that was ASLR. I'm going to kill this one. But I honestly believe that this can improve security a bit. Of course, first you need to move into Vista and Windows Server 2008, but I think that's the message of this entire thing. Virtualization, SQL, and the new operating systems, stuff like that. So, what else can we do? When it comes to DEP, I mean, he does a tool that can fix other applications, but it didn't fix his own one. So I'm going to close down Acrobat Reader. If we look at DEP, I enable DEP on my operating systems, and it works fine in production environment. Do you enable DEP? Everybody who really enables DEP, hands up. That's a few of you, so it's worth talking about it. If everybody did this, I could drop this section, right? So the problem is that DEP is like enabled by default even in Vista, or even in Vista, it's enabled by default in Vista, but only to a certain degree. So if we look at this computer properties, and I hate this because they change and I almost never find it. Here it is, advanced performance. This is obviously a performance thing. Data execution prevention, I don't know why they hit it so well, but you can turn on DEP for all applications and programs except for those I select. And I think, does anybody know how to, do this with like group policies or a script or something so you can do it enterprise-wise? Hands up if you know. You will have to explain to the audience. One of you guys do. I maybe don't have the best solutions. If you have a better one, let me know later and we'll all try to communicate it. Actually, I promise you that there is a backside to running sessions like this. I mean, the good thing about running a PowerPoint session is that you can download the deck and you will get all the info, right? This is a live session. So I put a lot of references in the deck. You can download them if you want to. But I also promise you, before Friday, I will have all the screenshots, everything on my blog. And I will give you reference to the blog in the end of the session. All my notes, links, screenshots, everything will be there. Because that's what I would want if I was sitting in the audience. So if you take notes, you can do it, but if you don't have to. So the only thing that I want to show you is the fact that this is only a register change. So if you know the right place in the registry, you can create a reg file and you can distribute it between different computers in a script. So that's basically that is why I call this really not Kung Fu, but useful. Because the thing about DEP is that some applications also are not really DEP compatible. So they can crash. So since you have control of your applications, when you distribute them and notice that they crash, you can create a register thing that you can distribute to all your client workstations, and they will be aware and they will have this, don't use DEP on this particular application. But I want to go to like DEP on everything except for what I choose. I don't want DEP on some things, the operating systems itself. So I'm just going to show you the register place, configure DEP in the registry. And if you look at this, it's not that difficult to find, really. It's in the computer HK local machine, software, Microsoft, Windows NT, current version, app compat flag layers. That is why I'm going to distribute this later. Okay? So you can find it. It's not that difficult. It's logical anyway. It will be on my blog. And I had it. Why did I leave it? App compat flags. So the layer thing is where you do the exceptions. So, I mean, I can do this in the UI. If I add a new one, that will be an exception. like C:\Windows Notepad or something. That one has to have, because it's a Microsoft binary, it's compiled with a flag. So it's with NX flags, so it needs dep. But with some other application, like probably the Adobe Reader, it would end up here, like the stud.pe. You don't believe me now. I'm going to take this away. For example, if you look at this, apply, stud.pe, if you modify binary data, you see, enable NX, show UI. If you do this, it's going to be disable NX, show UI. So enable or disable, you can set this. So every application you put in there, don't use the Windows binaries because you can't change them. Obviously, I learned something too, will be in the registry. So all you need to do is actually export this to a reg file. And you can run this. If you want to change dep, if you want to start by changing dep, there is no flag that you can find here, because that's a special flag called the last no execute radio button state. And you can't see it, so you need to know exactly where it is, unless you change the configuration. Then it will show up. It will require a restart. But now that I changed it, if I do a refresh, new execute state, last no execute radio button state, now I can go in here and see that if you set this to the decimal value of 12, it will not be disabled, it will not be enabled on all the applications. If you set on 13, if I change it again, now it's going to be 13. Now I can do the reg file and I can enable dep on all the computers. So one person, is your version, your way is better probably, isn't it? If it is, it's not. That's cool, then this one will work then for now, until somebody comes up with a better. So you can actually enable dep in your enterprise, do the reg or whatever, start up script on the computers, and you have dep. First you need to have a client where you try all the applications and see what happens. When they work, you can do this. Okay? Is this interesting? Is it 400 level? Okay, good. I just want the feedback, because next time I'm going to do 200 level on the, if you think that's more valid. It's not in the feedback anymore. You can't say if it's correct levels. I'm asking you directly. I'd like to get the feedback from you guys. So, what else can we do? We have some more minutes on this session. Hardening OS and applications. This is not so fun, but of course it's important because it will lower the attack surface. Good hardening is really important, and there are a lot of hardening guides and references from Microsoft. This is not really 400 level, I mean, how to do this, but I think you should use the guides. Microsoft communicates role-based hardening with group policies, stuff like that. We could do one quick example if you want to. Just looking at the Windows Server 2008 and the old tool that's been around even since Windows Server 2003, Service Pack 1. We can do the security configuration wizard, just as a hardening example. I'm going to spend 1 minute on this one. So, if it's in 2008. This is the 2008 version. Are you still running 2003? Jeez, man. The problem is the screen. No, this is 2008. This is 2008. It's just that the screen is not really synchronized. They couldn't fix it. The vendors didn't make perfect drivers for the 2008. That's a good attack vectors. I mean, it's only like beta drivers. Usually not that well security checked. So, I'm just going to run it to show you the strength of it. You can create your new security policy. And the thing is that you have this role system. When you use role-based hardening on servers, you have this particular application service that looks the same. They require the same hardening. So, I'm just going to run it, and I'm going to make a template from this system. Run it in the configuration database. And this is nothing new to many of you, I know that, but it's important, so this is a reminder. Do the role-based configuration, and the good thing about this tool is that it will actually identify the services running on the machine. If you don't want them, you can click them away. If you want them, you can. If you want things that are not running right now, you can just click the button. And these are the installed rules. You can also add other rules. So there are quite a few here. Next step, features. New concept of Windows Server 2008, rules and features. Installed options. These are other things that you can configure if you want to, but it will notice what options you're using already. Smart card is installed on this machine, so it will actually create a policy that is aware of that. So smart card will still work. The guides are not that dynamic. So this is very good, especially if you have third-party applications running. It will notice them and make exceptions for them. Services, we know that this is a network policy server, SSL protocol service running. And this is interesting. This is something that it's checking. So if I'm running this policy on a system and a service is installed and runs that was not on the list, it will be automatically disabled. So there's some monitoring and checking going on. It will actually do some actions. So we can disable the service if it's found. So this is the result. I'm going to click next. I can do network security. The good thing about this tool is that the network security part will know that all these rules, all these functions that we wanted to have, it will create according firewall rules to open only the ports needed for those services alone. Registry settings, we can do if we want backward compatibility and stuff. We don't need to understand the registry. We just click in some selections, authentication methods. If I do, you haven't seen my real hacking sessions, I promise you that. No, I don't. It depends. If you need backward compatibility, you need it. I need my NT4s. Okay, you have to use them. Is it good for security? No, it sucks. One of the good security tips would be stop using NT4s. Stop using Windows 2000. Move to the new systems. They were made in a different time. The attacks were different back then. They cannot stand the attacks of today. In 15 years, people will tell you not to use Windows Server 2008. They will. It's the evolution of security and the evolution of hacking. Audit policy. Can configure auditing. And the cool thing about this is that when you're done, you can save it down, demo. It will create an XML file that you can apply later. And you can actually run the security configuration command line tool, and you can do a transform so that you transform this one into a group policy. So you can use it the way you're used to do it. And I think this is really the interesting part, because I know maybe you heard it before, but you forgot it. And you never used it. I know you didn't. Even though you don't admit it. Yeah, I did. I know you don't do it fully. You're not using this at all, are you? Because this is an XML document, and we want it in DPO format. That easy, but Microsoft does it for us. Why I need? Sorry. Why I need a translation? No, I'm going to give you a good answer to that. Because you can use this tool directly to configure remote systems. So you don't need to. I mean, there are two different ways of rolling out security configuration. There are more, but two real important ways. And if you have an issue with that, talk to the Microsoft guys. That's the good thing about being external. I don't have to take responsibility for anything. I think it's cool that you have the option. I don't think that I have thought this through well enough to fight you over it or agree with you. But when I've done, we can talk more about it. Right now, I'm not going to say something stupid. I have to think, and I'm on stage. A lot of energy going on just to keep this demo running well. So, I could just do that. I don't even remember. What was the name of it? Demo something, right? Demo XML, that's right. p:, demo XML. I'm going to transfer it into a group policy, g:, demo/g:, demo. I did something in error. C:, / maybe. Without space. Thank you. And now it probably works. So if I go to the group policy management, open it up, I have a new demo group policy here. So I realized it would be nice if you could just click a button and it will end up right there. But maybe, if you think about it, this maybe wasn't a real domain thing. Maybe we were running this on another machine in the demo environment to set the standard, and then we wanted to run in the real environment. So maybe this doesn't really have connection with Active Directory. Maybe you don't have rights to create group policy on this machine right now. Hey, I'm not disagreeing, I'm just thinking. I'm trying. So show all. So now we got in the group policy. This is a good report documentation. You can put it in some place and you can say, this is how I configure my systems. So you have documentation for free. And that's good. You can edit them. So you can take the rules and you can change them. Like, for example, if you want to do the firewall rules, if you want to make them even more strict. Oh, firewall, Windows firewall, there it is. So it's created a lot of rules for us, inbound rules. This is a refresh thing, it's going to show up. So everything here was created just because we ran the script. I think that's pretty neat. So that's like the concept of hardening. I think you have two, yes? Question, I'm going to try to answer it. We only have, we have 13 more minutes, so it's okay. It's a good question. The question is it true that this should only be used on non-default systems because it's already implemented by default in Windows Server 2008 for server rules? Yeah. So I think, I agree with you. I think that's true. I think even if you look backwards into 2003, which most of you are using today already, I think you have two different choices. If you use the role-based hardening guides from Microsoft, they will be good for the default configuration systems. If you have a file server that is kind of default, a web server kind of default. If you have changed the systems, if you're running these homegrown applications, special application servers, then this is a tool of choice, I think. I mean, you can do manual configuration, but hey, that's difficult. That requires skills. If you got the skills, you can start with this, and then you can do some manual changes instead. So, that's hardening. We have other things as well. We have service hardening. I talked a little bit about that. Patch management. You cannot have a session like this without mentioning patch management. I mean, I think that is the key concept of securing yourself from exploit attacks. Run new software that has hardened themselves from the start, and then use a patch management solution. And my only addition to this discussion about patch management is the fact that I think that most of us IT people are too tools-oriented when it comes to patch management. We think that the new SMS coming up is very cool and interesting, so we want to use that one for patch management. Or we want to use WSUS because it's free. So we implement WSUS, and then we patch everything that one supports, and we don't care much about the rest because it's difficult because we don't have the right tools. So the orientation should be in the process and not in the application itself, the patch application. So let's just repeat the patch management process for a second. And I realize I'm not on the right screen, and nobody told me that, but we did this together. So this is just the patch management process from Microsoft. I put a lot of references here, so if you really want to read about it, you can. But some important things to mention. You can't patch what you don't know you have. So you need to have good inventory and assessment. And I think this is almost impossible in all the customer environments I see today. I spend 95% of my time in the field. I'm not a professional presenter. I'm not like one of them superheroes that only does presentations. So I know for a fact that people are installing their own applications, and it's just wild out there. Very few companies or enterprises or organizations can really say that these are the applications we're running. Some can, but most can't. You need good inventory, and you need centralized application deployment. You need it more than you might think. Because if you do, you know what to patch. If you don't know what to patch. And I will find one vulnerable client or server in minutes. That's the key thing here. So now you know in the process, you need to have good inventory. The next step is to have some kind of way to identify new vulnerabilities. And since you have good inventory, you know exactly what needs to be patched and you know what to watch for. You can subscribe to good services who can do that for you, or you can contact all the vendors and ask them, how do I know whenever there's a new exploit, a new patch, something out there? I mean, Microsoft has worked hard on this, but many third-party vendors hasn't. Contact the vendors, put pressure on them, or buy third-party services that will let you know. You need to understand how to take care of the problem when the problem arrives. And you need to know that when there is a problem. Microsoft does a great job. Everybody else, some does, some doesn't. And now you can map, now when you know that there's new vulnerability, you can map this to the inventory, and you know which systems that needs some kind of solution. The next step of this plan is to really check and take precautions and decide how we're going to do this. This includes testing. Most people want to test the patches before they run them. I actually have customer environments, important customer environments, even governmental facilities, where they have a new policy. Apply patches directly. It's out there. Talk to others. They do it. I know customer environments when the security people managing patches and taking decisions over patches, the IT security department, they are allowed to override the system owners, even though these are critical applications. I mean, there will be a mapping to the change management process here. This is where if you need to do change on a system, you should have a process for that too, if these systems are important. But the last words at this customer place is made by the IT security people. I'm not saying that that's right for your enterprise, but I'm saying that people are starting to do that, so it's an option. Who has the last word? The system owner or the security department? Because there's one thing that the system owner might not know. Maybe he's the system owner of this particular application running in a big server that runs other distributed applications. He doesn't want to patch his applications, but his application will affect the entire system because, like you saw in the first example, the entire system might be owned. So he will indirectly affect these other applications. And somebody needs to coordinate that, and that would be the IT security people who understands the impact. That's just something you might need to think about. What do you think? So you test, you map this to the change management process, you plan for deployment, you identify which machines needs deployment of patches. You can also look for alternate measures. Maybe there's something other you can do than bring on the patch. Maybe that will make the change management process easier. Maybe you can just disable a function. Maybe you can just enable ASLR in depth, for example. Maybe that works for this exploit. ASLR the application, you're not vulnerable. It might die, but it's not going to break the entire security system. And then deploy the patches. So now when you know exactly what you need to patch, you can set up a good deployment process, and you can choose the right patch management solutions. And you will realize very soon that the inventory tells you that you have this long list of applications and operating systems, and you also have software in your Cisco devices and wireless access points that are also sometimes vulnerable to exploits, who are very seldom patched. They should also be in the inventory. Now you can find a solution to patch all of these. You will not be able to do it with WSUS. With WSUS and something else, or with WSUS and some manual processes, okay, but not with that solution alone. And hackers are not really going for Microsoft as much as they used to do. They're looking for third-party things because that's easier than hacking Microsoft stuff. I promise you that. We do this for a living in my own company. So again, I'm going to drop patch management. Last thing to say about it is that this is an ongoing process, because whenever you deploy the patches, it's new week. There is new software brought into the company. There are new computers bought, things like that. So I brought some references. I'm going to publish them on the web as well. This is actually one of the best patch management documents out there. You can find all these documents, microsoft.com/downloads. Just search for patch management. You'll find them. You only need one address. I think one big problem also about, I talked a little bit about strict application deployment policy. I'm not going to spend much time on that because we only have 4 minutes left of this session. I want to show you the advanced attack framework, the last thing I do. So I'm going to talk about this for a second. I think that you should really work towards running your environment where the users are only regular users and non-admins. I tell you this from the experience of being a penetration tester. It's way more difficult for me to do client-side exploitation. Way more. It will help you in controlling application distribution. People will have a harder time to implement or install their own applications. Even though they can circumvent it, you will raise the bar and you will get a better fit environment. This is just an example of what a customer did. This may not be the most supported solution out there, but it's a good thing to mention about this. Microsoft built a good feature in the system a long time ago, in the Windows XP time, called soft restriction policies. And you all seen it. Why aren't we using it? Soft restriction policies allows you to control what is being executed on the system. This is because I did some hacking on this system last week. So, the big problem is that in the best of worlds, you would have a whitelisting policy. Deny everything, but only allow the applications of my choice. Wouldn't that be great? Hands up if you think that would be great. Really, honestly, raise your hand, even though it's a bit embarrassing if you think so. Most people think so. So, how long time do you think this took me? This is the entire installation of Windows with all the applications in this system. What do you think? 3 hours? Weeks? No, 2 minutes. I mean, there are solutions out there. I'm not saying that you should use them. I'm just saying they're very hard to find. So you can just take like the entire system, you can create a reference system, and then you can distribute this in group policies. So you could do the entire OS disk or whatever, documents and settings, program files. You could drag and drop this, and it will hash up the entire thing. It exists. It's not on the market. I don't know why. This is a thing a customer created over a weekend. We have scripts in my company. We promise to publish those on my blog. I'll give you the blog address. So I mean, you can actually use soft restriction policies. It's possible. So you can create systems that can run anything, but not the hacking things. Because this one is disabled by default as a setting, speed level, disallowed. Everything is disallowed except for exactly these hashed checked files. If I take a notepad from a different operating system, it's not even going to work. There's no directory rules at all. It only hash rules, and it works. So I cannot use my hacking tools on this one. This will make it way more for your own employees to install unsupported applications, to follow the policy of running only this list of applications. I think this is really valuable if you want to use it. I'm not telling you to use it. I'm just showing you that it's there. So, my time is up. I don't care. I'm going to run the last demo anyway. And this is going to take 1 minute. And there is 30 minutes to next session, so don't worry. You're not going to miss it. I'm going to show you the expert frameworks of tomorrow, and this is actually an expert framework that exists today. This is the best of breed thing that's out there in the market today. Switch. Thank you. Next time I'm going to bring you wherever I am. So I'm going to use the core impact. This costs money. It's a commercial framework. This is not for hackers. This is for penetration testing. You don't need to worry. This will never be used by anyone in bad will, because it's in the agreement. You need to sign it, say, I'm not going to attack systems that is not my own. So the core impact. And I'm just going to do this to show you how easy it is and how effective it is if you have this in control. I'm going to shut down some other stuff. It seems to be using all my... Here we go. I'm going to open up a new workspace. Test 01. I have a great license. I'm going to create a key so that when the police comes, they cannot see what I did. Or I mean, sorry, the thieves comes and steal my pen testing work. This is an issue with passwords. That's why you should use smart cards. You don't need to remember a PIN code, which is shorter. Finish. So let's run the thing. And this is very complex, but look at this, the rapid penetration testing view. This is a wizard-based attack. I'm on a network. Remember the client-side exploit. Maybe I'm on the one machine on the internal network. I'm going to click Next. And I'm going to attack the network 192.168.1. And to make this quicker, 1.2.30. Next. I want it fast. So it does network information gathering now. It's going to try to localize hosts on this network. So it's banging away, and wherever I find a new host, it's going to end up here. It found the 10, the 20, and the 30 machine. So when this is done, it's actually running some scanners and things to identify things about these systems to make the attacks more accurate. So it's trying to decide the operating system, things like that. I know I'm over time. Give me 30 more seconds. 5 minutes, that's great. All I need is 4.5. Just kidding, I'm going to be really quick. Next thing, network attack and penetration. Click Next. Can you hear the speed of my voice? Can you hear it? I want to attack 10, 20, 30. Okay, next. I don't care about the configuration, I'm a loser. I'm just clicking Finish. And whenever there is a plus sign, it means I own the system. So it's just attacking the entire network of hundreds and hundreds of computers. And if there's one lacking a patch, it will be owned. If there is one without security measures, I now own 10 and 30. What can I do with these ones? I can right-click. I can open up a shell. I can steal all the files on the system with the browser thing, and I can upload all my hacking tools. The browse files feature. Upload, download. It's my system. I can actually even set focus on this guy, set a source, and I can start the process all over again from his machine. So now I'm hacking the entire internal network because I got to 1. It doesn't come cheap. So I'm going to finish this session off by saying one more thing. I know I run some controversial subjects. If you like these sessions, if you think they're valuable, I mean, they only gave me 1 session this year. Fill out the evals and give me good scores. If you don't like the sessions, don't fill out the evals. Thank you.